Yosi Amram is an expert in leadership development and personal growth. He has coached over 100 CEOs, including leaders of multi-billion-dollar companies, and his research on spiritually intelligent leadership has received over 1,000 academic citations. My conversation with Yosi took a really fascinating turn very early on. I thought for the majority of the conversation, we were going to be talking about spiritually intelligent leadership and the domains of spiritually intelligent leadership. But he had a spiritual transformative experience that blew the doors off of everything that he understood. And it was really this spiritually transformative experience that shaped the trajectory of his life. So I was so excited to have this conversation because it really illuminated so much of what I've been talking about in terms, particularly in the field of mental health, about what constitutes a spiritual emergence versus a spiritual emergency, and how these experiences can really transform our entire lives. So I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation because I was just taken to a different place. It was not at all what I had expected or where I thought it was going to go. So I'm excited for you all to hear that as well. With that, here's my conversation with Yosi Amram.
We need at our table of awareness the logician, but equally we need the intuitive, we need the mystic.
I almost died. I was allowed to go to the very precipice of death, of life and death, and look over the edge. And I was allowed to behold what was there and allowed to come back. Most people aren't.
When we talk about being aligned with ourself or being aligned with our soul or hearing our higher self, that's really what we're talking about, is being connected to that divine part of ourself, that light-filled part of us that is connected to God energy, that is connected to everybody here and every experience we've ever had.
If more doctors, more professionals can open up to use intuitive gifts in their work, that's really important.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, mediumship, near-death experiences, consciousness, and what it all means. Welcome, Yosi, to Life, Death, and the Space Between.
Thank you, Amy. I'm excited and curious to see where our conversation goes.
So I was captivated by your work because you talk about spirituality and leadership, and those two don't normally go together. So can you just give us sort of a brief intro as to what your path was, because it was a very unique path, and how you found yourself in a place of a psychologist looking at leadership and bringing spirituality into that space, because those two seem to maybe not really jive well together.
Okay, let's see if I can say that in
right.
concise
Succinctly, tell
way.
us all of that.
My whole life story that, hopefully it won't take the whole podcast, but I'll just draw one distinction. Focusing is that my focus is less spirituality in general, but spiritual intelligence, which is slightly different. And I will also try and explain how and why spiritual intelligence is slightly different than spirituality, because kind of like what you highlighted, spirituality, we don't really think of people that are spiritual as being divorced from being practical. It's kind of woo-woo, esoteric, etc. And what spiritual intelligence tries to do is bridge the gap between the quote unquote spiritual and the practical. I mean, if you can draw an analogy to emotional intelligence, in the same way when I ask you, do you know people in your life that are emotional? You might think of some people, and that's not necessarily the best compliment for those people. They might be drawn to a lot of drama, etc. So up until the construct of emotional intelligence came through two academicians, we used to think there's a dichotomy between emotion and reason, and someone was either emotional or rational. And now we understand with emotional intelligence that dichotomy is false, that we can use emotional information and resources to help our functioning and well-being, and that's very intelligent. So we have a similar dichotomy between the spiritual and the practical, and spiritual intelligence collapses that and says, no, drawing on spiritual resources and qualities and embody them is very practical and supports our well-being individually, collectively, and it contributes to the bottom line and better leadership. Okay, so I kind of skipped your question.
Well, we got the definition. We have an idea of what spiritual intelligence is now. I'm going to back you up and take us to how you got to thinking about spiritual intelligence as an important component, I would argue, to life in general, but you keep it to leadership, but I think it's to everything. But let's start.
It is for everything. It is for everything. And my research supports that, and all the other research that people have done supports that. So I'll try and explain my life story quickly. So I was born and raised in Israel, and like all young Israeli men, I was drafted into the military at age 18. Despite being a pacifist and my leaning, etc. Fortunately, it was a peaceful time, not like the horror that's going on now. And I was kind of a shy and introverted math and science kid. But to my surprise, I had the fastest promotion record in the history of my regiment and won all these leadership awards. But despite my success, the command and control model of the military, which is really important and crucial in battle, you don't have time to go into a conference room and build consensus about someone calls the shot and says, you run here, you run here. So the command and control model really chafed at my soul, but I was interested in leadership. So I resolved to someday build an organization and try out different approaches to leadership that will bring out the best in people. So long story short, I came to the US, I studied engineering, business, etc., and then I became an entrepreneur. And I started a company, and the company was called Individual Inc., and it was the first company to do personalized interactive newspapers before the internet. So you'd get Amy's newspaper, morning newspaper on your fax machine. I don't know if you're old enough to remember those days.
I am. I remember a fax machine. I remember dial-up, too.
Okay, dial-up internet. So you'd get Amy's morning news on your fax machine, and we had self-learning software agents that would tell the system based on which articles you found relevant or not, how to tune itself. But the name Individual also stood for organizational philosophy that supported the growth and actualization of each individual in a community, team, environment context. So I was very passionate about the company and the concept, and it meant it was kind of the driving force of my life since my late teenage years, as I was saying. So I was working 70, 80 hours a week. And then the internet came, and it became clear that all the stuff we were delivering on fax as a premium subscription-based service was going to become available free on the internet and ad supported. So I kind of became terrified because we had raised tens of millions of dollars from the top venture capitalists in Silicon Valley and top companies like Microsoft. So there's a lot of pressure and expectation, both from my employees and my investors and my own inner drive and identity that was tied to the company. The company was me. And so when that was threatened, my sense of self was threatened. And then I entered a depression. And at one point, I had to stand in front of my company and tell, the hundreds of employees how we're going to move to an internet business. And I didn't have an idea, and I just couldn't face it. So I fled from the situation for 2 weeks to kind of regroup. And then I eventually persisted, and we figured out a strategy, and we became an internet company and went public, and our stock was highly rising. And, I was kind of at the top echelon of Silicon Valley, the internet entrepreneurs, etc. And I was running around trying to capitalize on the internet opportunity and do all these initiatives. And one day I was trying to relax and receive a massage, just a deep tissue massage. And I was interested in consciousness and the mind-body problem and the relationship between consciousness and the body and materiality.
But you were also on this super track.
I was on the super high achiever track, yeah. So while I was relaxing in this deep tissue massage, kind of my ego relaxed and dissolved. And normally we think that there are three things. There's the me, whatever that is, as the observer. There's the consciousness, and then there's the object of consciousness, like whatever I'm seeing you on the screen right now. So we think there are three things. But in my experience, as I was kind of relaxing, I realized that it's all one thing. It's all made of consciousness, which is a pervasive field unraveled. So my separate sense of self dissolved. And as I opened my eyes through the face cradle and looked at the floor, it felt like it was in me. This idea that there's any separate objects that are distant just seemed like a construct of the mind rather than, what reality is really made of. So that blew the circuits of my mind.
So you had a spontaneous, spiritually transformative experience.
You could say that, yeah. But that also threw me into a manic episode because I couldn't contain that insight and didn't know how to integrate it, which then led me to, being pushed out of the company because I was trying to do all these things. I was getting all these downloads and insights about the future of the internet. I wanted everything to be done yesterday. And my board and team couldn't keep up with me. I was in this manic hyper phase.
Hang on, I want to stop you for a second. Okay, I was not anticipating this would go this way, but I'm fascinated by this. Okay, so you have this spiritually transformative experience that sounds like you probably had some difficulty integrating after it happened.
To say the least.
And you go from being a very logical, rational mind to what sounds like experiencing spiritual information coming in that you weren't anticipating. And now you're getting all this information. You're sort of seeing the matrix unfold before you. You're trying to communicate this to your board and you can't get it through because they're not, you seem completely crazy, frankly, to them. So you define it as a manic episode. I think this is so important. And this is what I'm so passionate about is understanding spiritual emergences that come out of these episodes that traditionally in therapy settings would be seen as manic, but it sounds like it was really a spiritual awakening. It's been a while since I've talked to you about what I'm up to. I want to first start by thanking so many of my supporters who have supported me on Patreon and in my Circle community. What's so exciting now is we have my new Circle community up and running, where if you want to contribute to supporting the podcast, you can do so at different levels for different values. So head on over to my Circle group. You can actually find the link in the show notes below. And there's opportunities to continue to support the podcast. And I have to say, your support of the podcast is frankly what has kept this podcast going over time. I have been funding the podcast solely by myself. I get a little bit of money in advertising dollars, but not a lot. So anything that you can give, if you have found value in this podcast, and it's not just giving without anything back, I will give back to you. You will be a part of this community with opportunities for discounts and conversations and ask Amy anythings. But it's a great opportunity for you to support what hopefully has helped you over the many, many years. Also, there's so many other ways now that you can work with me. I am offering a group course called Live Your Life Backwards, which is finishing its first cohort this winter and has been absolutely incredible. There's retreats coming up. There's workshops. There's one-on-one sessions with me. So many options that we can work together. So make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to my podcast and make sure you're subscribed to my newsletter where you will get a free soul wisdom workbook to help you dig deeper into the virtues that you want to be living in this lifetime. We all need so much more spirituality now. We are in a spiritual crisis, and I'm giving you so many tools to tap into your own spirituality. So check out and don't forget to subscribe to Life, Death, and the Space Between so you never miss an episode.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate that, and you're being very generous. But I would just say that it can be both. I mean, yeah, so it's how you mentioned the term spiritual emergency, and, so you probably know the work of Groff and the spiritual emergency network. So, yeah, when people have a Kundalini awakening, they can be spontaneous, they can't contain the energy, and it can become a manic episode, or at least from a clinical diagnosis standpoint, can be labeled that.
Right. The emergence versus emergency, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference. Yours became an emergency versus an emergence.
Right. So it wasn't gradual. It was just kind of things blew up and I couldn't contain all that energy. So yeah, so my board just thought I went crazy, and then they put me what they called on a voluntary leave of absence. They passed the resolution, which there was nothing voluntary about it. They just wanted me to take 90 days off and go chill out. And of course, I had this urgency about everything that needed to be done. I said, no way. And I resigned. They fired me. It's a big drama. And I was canceled. I moved from being at the top, sought after Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, CEOs, and the top internet world to people not returning my calls and emails. So it brought up a lot of shame but then I was trying to understand what happened. Why did I get depressed? What was this awakening? Was it real? Was it delusional? So that changed the direction of my life. And then ultimately I went back and got a PhD in clinical psychology, particularly in the field of transpersonal psychology, which looks at integrating spirituality. And that's when I heard about the term spiritual intelligence, which was coined not by me, but by Dana Zohar, a woman who wrote a book called Rewiring the Corporate Brain. But she didn't really operationalize what it was and had a measure or a definition. And I was aware of all the work done on emotional intelligence and the research by Daniel Goleman and many others that looked at how emotional intelligence contributes to leadership and all kinds of positive outcome in our lives. So I thought, spiritual intelligence would be a very parallel construct, and I want to study it. So I got on this research program and work to define what is spiritual intelligence, how to measure it. And then I did a study with 42 CEOs and 200 members of their staff and showed that leaders that scored higher on spiritual intelligence led teams with high morale, greater commitment, and lower turnover, even when you control for emotional intelligence and other personality factors that were known to contribute to leadership. So the point was to show that spiritual intelligence added something above and beyond what we already understood through emotional intelligence. And then since then, a lot of other researchers took my measure or developed other measures and have shown that leaders with greater spiritual intelligence produce even better financial results for their organizations. People are more satisfied. They have better quality of life, more resilience, better relationships. Now it's over 15 years since my research. There's a ever-growing body of research across cultures and languages that shows that spiritual intelligence is real and measurable, and to your point, beneficial in life in general, not just in leadership. But my book, yeah.
Yeah, I want to go back to this experience because I'm fascinated by this. We're going to get back to the spiritually intelligent leadership too, which is...
Or spiritual intelligence more general. Oh, thank you. You got my book. Yeah.
I got your book. I read your book.
Awesome.
Okay, so in this download, what information is coming to you?
Well, that everything is connected. Everything is connected across time and space, and we are part of one field of consciousness. And yeah.
So how, in knowing that, then when you go back to work, what is your work starting to look like, or what are you starting to want to do in your organization? And people are like, absolutely not. This sounds crazy.
Well, I mean, so there is that metaphysical understanding as I articulated it. And then the other thing was that the internet is the matrix that actually, in a way, is a metaphor for this thing, because the internet is the network of networks that connects everything across time and space. Like right now, you're in Chicago, I'm here, and we're connected in real time. And someone is going to watch this video that we're recording, and then they're going to watch it, and they're going to feel like they're right here with us. The internet is kind of giving us a taste of this interconnectedness and across time and space. And then when I understood that, it also became clear to me that, it's so critical for us to be connected to other people, etc. So then I saw where our human needs for connection and self-expression could be really actualized and expressed through the internet. So this is what before companies like Facebook and Google were formed. And I wanted to basically enable individuals to express their unique, authentic, creative self and then connect with like-minded people over the internet. And so just kind of I was getting the future of where this is all going. and wanted to my company individual to bring about that future, but that was too much for us to execute on. I wanted everything done really quickly and done yesterday, and my team couldn't keep up, and my board was like, this is too crazy.
So did they think that the idea of where things were headed was crazy? It's so interesting that you're talking about this. No, they didn't. They just thought,
Well,
we can't.
well, it took him a long time to understand it, because I was speaking very fast. I was getting all this information, so I wasn't taking the time to really
Integrate
it and explain it in a way. So the ideas, I mean, they didn't think the ideas were that crazy once they understood them, but it took them a while to understand them. And then the other thing is they saw that I was trying to do too much too fast, and that was their concern. But yeah, so yeah, well, fire away. Any other questions?
Okay, so you get fired. And then what is the impetus at that point that, I mean, you had this spiritual, did you call it a Kundalini experience?
I was starting to study, like, and understand, and I discovered the work of Groff and whatever. I didn't know so much about Kundalini at the time, but I heard about spiritual emergencies, and I heard about people that had all kinds of awakening experiences and the mystics and the strange experiences that they had. But I was also trying to understand, was it delusional or real? And I was just kind of like, and then also trying to understand, why did I get depressed in the first place? And, why was
After the experience?
No, before the experience.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even after I was pushed out, for a while, I was in a very up mood, because, the business, the money didn't matter so much once I had this greater spiritual awakening. But after a while, that wore off. And then the loss of the company, and which was my baby, and being shut out and shamed. And there were stories in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal that, yes, he was emotionally unstable and all this stuff. So then I I didn't go into a deep clinical depression again, but it just kind of, the weight of all of that reality started to sink in, and that was painful. I mean, there was a lot of grief that I was heading to let go of this baby and the company and all the power and status that I had. And
that now meant nothing, because you had this experience, but then you come back from this experience and you're still human. And so you're dealing with the human emotions, but also like these bigger feelings of like, none of this matters, but it all matters simultaneously, it feels like.
Yeah, that's the paradox. Yeah.
Right. Wow. This is so fascinating, because I think that, when you're prepared for something like this, like people who go into perhaps a psychedelic experience, right? And they're somewhat prepared, although I think you can never really be prepared for what that experience is going to be like. But you had this, you think you're going in for a massage, and you come out and feel one with the universe. So everybody out there listening, be careful what you wish for. And then you don't have the support to help make sense of this and help process it. Yet it could be so incredible. It had the potential to be, and it sounds like it still was for you. You made of it what you made of it. But like in that moment where you're getting this information for your company, you're able to access whatever you want to call it, global consciousness, quantum reality. And yet you're too far ahead of where people can go.
Yeah.
They're capable.
So it's exhilarating experience, and it's painful experience at the same time. It's exhilarating because I am connected and I have access to all this consciousness of oneness, and there is a sense of power and so on, and energy and aliveness like I've never felt before. But at the same time, because people don't get me, it's a bit crazy making, and it's also isolating. So it's what can I say? I mean, it's a precious experience. It's
Have you gone on? Don't worry, we're going to get back to the spiritually intelligent leadership stuff.
I'm not worried. I'm enjoying this.
Have you gone on to have other experiences like the one that you had?
Well, I do have other experiences where I'm one with the universe. Yeah, I mean, I can experience that during meditation. I can experience that walking in nature, but not in the same way. And that's kind of mind blowing thing. So, I
Right.
mean,
Ego
these days,
dissolution, world
uh,
raveling.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, these experiences of being part of one field that's all pervasive and ego dissolution are pretty more ordinary for me these days. So it's like, oh, okay. And in those moments, there's no consciousness so much. It's just like, there's just presence or emptiness or silence or the sense of a mystery and awe. But in those moments, I'm not thinking, oh, I'm having this experience, it's just like,
You're
it's,
just present in the experience.
yeah. And so, but then, the self-consciousness comes back and I say, oh, that I was having that experience 5 seconds ago or 5 minutes ago or whatever it is. And then this I constellates again. But now I've traveled this way enough times. I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, just like the ego comes together, dissolves, comes together, and it's a dance. And it's so I'm accustomed to it. It doesn't blow my mind, I'm not just like I've integrated it, but it's taken many years. So, but the importance of spiritual intelligence. So this is like also highlight why spiritual intelligence is different than spirituality or spiritual experience, because this awakening was an experience and, it led to an insight. But I couldn't integrate and embody this sense of oneness and live with it. So spiritual intelligence is not about having a momentary experience, which can happen spontaneously or during meditation or walking in the forest. It's also not the same as a spiritual belief. I may believe that there's a higher power in God or cosmic consciousness or the immortality of the soul, etc. Those are all nice and important spiritual belief systems. But spiritual intelligence is then the ability to embody these qualities that in daily life, which is to live a life of service and purpose with trust and gratitude and humility and compassion and integrity, etc., which came through my research as being universal across all the wisdom traditions and all the spiritual traditions. For thousands of years, humanity across cultures, and whether it's in the East and in Asia and Buddhism and Hinduism, or in the West, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, Islam, or Taoism, or shamanism, regardless of their cosmology, whether they believed that Jesus was the Messiah or Muhammad was the final prophet, or the world is made of the dance between Shiva and Shakti, or the yin and yang, or whatever. There are different cosmologies, but they all talked about these qualities and virtues as leading to the good life, the happy life that's satisfying for us individually and that is also pro-social. And so spiritual intelligence is the ability to embody these qualities in daily life. When I'm driving on the freeway, when I'm in a team meeting, at work. So do I want to be right, prove myself right, which comes from my ego that feels deficient and tries to prop itself by showing I'm smarter than people around me? Or do I try and do the right thing because, that's just, I'm devoted to truth and I don't have a lot of ego in proving myself. So spiritual intelligence is about how we live those realizations in daily life.
And how do leaders, well, can you walk us through sort of the 7 dimensions of spiritually intelligent leadership?
Yeah, so there are these 7 domains. One is meaning. So it's like mobilizing meaning for ourselves and people around us. And it's discovering our own purpose as an individual, our unique gifts, how we want to actualize them and contribute, and aligning that with the organizational sense of purpose. So when we have that alignment within our individual purpose and an organizational purpose, obviously we're feeling a lot more empowered and aligned. So, and then mobilizing that sense of purpose and service for the organization. Then there's a domain of grace, which is bringing the qualities of trust and gratitude, beauty, and joy into our interactions. So it's so critical for leaders and for all stuff to have trust in ourselves, in life, in the future, which means that we can have hope in our actions and things are not futile. And we can't control the outcome, but we have a certain trust that then what we're doing is worthwhile regardless of how exactly it turns out. We trust that we'll find our way through it, even if whatever our initial goal doesn't materialize. What we're doing is worthwhile and something good will come out of it. And so that gives the organizations a sense of optimism and hope that mobilizes people. There's a domain of inner directedness. So as leaders and as human beings, we want to tune in and follow our inner compass and our inner wisdom. And we're not looking for validation and approval externally. We're kind of tuning into our depth, the depth of our essence, the depth of our soul, and that's our North Star. And then we could have that inner trust and confidence to follow that. So we're not running a popularity contest as a politician. Mm. And then there's a domain of presence, which has to do with attention and intention. I mean, that's such a big challenge these days because we're bombarded with so many text messages and social media and emails, and everything is competing for our attention. But if I'm right now here with you and I'm thinking about my next client meeting or, what happened yesterday and what have you, then the quality of our interaction is going to be very poor. And that's, professionally at work, it's in our intimate relationship, it's our relationship with friends. And, presence is where life is happening in this moment. And as Thich Nhat Hanh says, this moment is life. Without being present, we can't win. Mm-hmm. As the Las Vegas casino sign says, you must be present to win. So there's a presence. Let's see. The other domain is around truth. So we're devoted and open to truth rather than ego. And so with that, then we can be open to reality. And, in the world of leadership, it means in business, I could be open to what the market, the feedback is saying, rather than holding on to my ideas because I'm trying to prove myself right. And then so it moves from trying to prove ourselves right to doing what's right and being open and curious and learning, and because we're devoted to truth rather than ego. And then there's the domain of wisdom, which has to do with intuition and higher self and practice.
And community.
And community. Okay, I missed community. Super important. So community is the recognition that we are interconnected. And so in a work environment, it's so crucial in this day and age where there's so much isolation and a loneliness epidemic and people working from home, but still over, the place where we spend the bulk of our waking hours is at work. And so having a community of people where there's mutuality of care, like we care about each other as people and we are aligned and shared the sense of purpose and sense of values. And then our energy and our efforts are multiplied and we have a sense of belonging. And we are supporting each other's growth and actualization.
So to me, these feel like the virtues that we are, right? Like this feels like finding your way back to, rather than learning a new skill. So how do you, maybe you disagree with me on that, but hang on.
Well, say that again. I'm not sure I follow.
That these domains feel like they should be our normal resting state. So it's not about teaching people them, it's helping people find their way back to them, recognizing that these 7 areas are really what's important and what matters. But how do you do that in a world where it still feels like, I'm with you here, but it still feels like everything is about the bottom line. And yeah, this is all nice and fluffy, but it's not going to matter in the end. I work with a lot of clients who are in really high-powered jobs, high-powered positions at very high-powered places that have nowhere near the embodiment of these domains. They make a lot of money. They grind people. They don't seem to care whether or not they have spiritually intelligent leaders. All that matters is the bottom line. So where are we with this in terms of people really wanting to get on board and embody this? Like they're like, okay, well, great. You have research that supports it, but I have a lot of money here coming in and I'm not going to shift how I am and suddenly, start talking with my lawyers or my financial advisors about the meaning and purpose of what we do. The meaning and purpose of what we do is to make a lot of money.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's not an easy thing. So I will just say, first of all, the term emotional intelligence was coined in 1990 by two academicians, Salovey and Meyer, and they published a paper, etc. But over 30 years later, everybody understands that emotional intelligence is good for us, good for the bottom line, so to speak, and good for our individual well-being. And that's because there's been a lot of research and a lot of education, a lot of people, exploring it. And now we have greater understanding. But even when people now say, yeah, emotional intelligence is important and they understand it intellectually, practicing it is hard. It's like, people have to become aware of their emotions and practice mindfulness or whatever it is to develop emotional intelligence, to become more self-aware of their emotions, better regulated, etc. Now, like anything, if you read a book about physical well-being and you say, yeah, I want to be healthy, that's good. But tonight, it's 10 o'clock. I'm about to go to bed and I'm kind of feeling restless, etc. Oh, let me go open the freezer and eat some ice cream, and I know that it's not so healthy for me, but I just want the sugar fix and be happy. And yeah, I should go to the gym, but maybe I'll go to the gym. But you have to set an intention and you have to be disciplined. And even when you go to the gym, you have to work different muscle groups. So when we're talking spiritual intelligence, I got these 7 domains and these 20 some qualities. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to set an intention and build a habit. And we know that to build a habit takes a month. So you have to start and say, okay, I'm going to work on the practice of gratitude. And we do know that people that practice gratitude, their mood improves. And we do know that when we appreciate people at work, not only do we feel the gratitude, but express it in the form of appreciation, it motivates others. So what I would tell this high-powered executive is, why don't you try for the next week or month spending, 3 minutes at night before you go to bed doing a gratitude journal, recounting what you feel happy about. Maybe it's something in business. You got a new business deal, a new order, someone did a great report, a new project, you feel grateful. So let's see how that affects your mood when you go to sleep and you wake up with that sense of gratitude. And then once you've kind of got that, see if you can express that appreciation in real time to people around you when something good happens. Like they know in business that you want to celebrate the wins. When a big order comes in, the salespeople ring the bell because it's like everybody's morale and it helps get more sales. So you do that and then, you gradually build it. But, I've been working with executives, leaders, sometimes for years, 8-10 years, and then they say, oh yeah, my life is transformed. I'm a better leader. I'm happier. And, they've built companies with billions of dollars in revenues and thousands of employees. And, 3 or 4 of my clients have become billionaires. So this doesn't mean that you have to be poor or you give away all your money or whatever. It's just like you connect to your life force energy and you actualize your potential, which is the most fulfilling thing. Mm-hmm. Now, so this all comes in sort of from, so we're talking about spiritual intelligence, but we do have also the field of positive psychology, the Marty Seligman developed. Right. And they have the character strengths inventory and the values in action. They have 24 qualities that they've researched that lead to happier, more fulfilled life. Now, if you look at, the qualities of spiritual intelligence versus character strengths and positive psychology, over half of them match 1-to-1. So you have, again, convergence from, these traditions that have been around for thousands of years and modern research, not just mine and spiritual intelligence, but positive psychology. And then you take other research in the field of leadership development and, take one of the top management consulting companies in the world called Bain & Company. And they studied thousands of companies to look at, you know, what makes for inspiring leaders and what's the difference between an employee that's inspired and an employee that's just going about doing their job to earn their paycheck. And they found that employees that are inspired are twice as productive as your average employee. And the qualities that lead employees to feel inspired are, they identified 33 of them. And again, over half of them map into the spiritually intelligent leadership. These are leaders that are servant-oriented, that are centered, they're present, they're compassionate, they're good listeners. So, you know, this dichotomy between the bottom line and it goes back to what we said in the beginning, spiritual versus practical. This is practical. You just try it and see what happens.
So this, to me, I feel like is why we need a psychedelic revolution.
Okay, well, that's one way to go.
No, I know. I mean, because not everybody is going to have the spiritual experience that you did, right? Certainly that I did too. I mean, that was part of why I'm here, is for a similar reason, because I had a spontaneous, spiritually transformative experience that shifted how I saw everything in the world. So, but I think what those experiences do is they help you step into and embody more of all these things you're talking about. And also, I think that the mental health crisis that we're facing, I mean, people aren't showing up at your office because everything at work is going great, right? They're showing up because something feels misaligned to them.
Or something in their life feels lacking or whatever, or they have attained the money and the fame and the glory, but it feels empty.
Right.
So, you know, all kinds of things. And yeah, but I do want to say, yeah, for some people, the psychedelic can open the doorway of perception that says, oh, there's something more. And that's a great thing. But I will also say that a number of my clients come to me for a variety of reasons, because they're having difficulty with their business or their mood's not so great or whatever. And they are not doing the psychedelic and they haven't had a spontaneous spiritual awakening. But as I work with them and they connect with themselves, they're like, oh, yeah, this is my life is becoming better. I'm getting more powerful as a leader, because our power can't be found outside. You can't also, as a leader, inspire anybody until and when you're inspired yourself. So leadership is first and foremost is an inside job, and it has to do with connecting with our depth, with our essence, with our life force energy, because that's the source of our power. So I'm just saying that there are different entryways.
Right.
You can have a
paths to the same destination.
Yeah. And if the destination is developing our spiritual intelligence, so we can have a psychedelic experience that wakes us up. We can have a spontaneous experience that wakes us up. We could
have a long therapeutic relationship that over time wakes us up. It sounds like, I know more depth psychology work that really gets into that.
And some people have to hit bottom and through addiction, or then they go into a 12-step program and they clean their life up, right? I mean, so some people had to hit bottom and because their spirit was down, they resorted to spirits, and they use spirits to make up for the lack of spirits. That's why it's called spirits. And so there are all these addiction problems, and then their life falls apart. And then they, they end
up in AA, which is very spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so you have to surrender to a higher power. But it's a whole program where you do forgiveness and all these things that clean. And so in effect, AA, I think, is working on helping people develop their spiritual intelligence. And however way people end up there. So I'm just suggesting there are many paths to...
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you. I'm not suggesting that, we all have psychedelics, although I do think that there is that sense of oneness that you describe is so powerful and unforgettable.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Really shakes you to your core. Again, if you can't integrate it, then you find yourself in a problematic situation.
Right. Which happened to me and can happen to some people on psychedelics.
Absolutely.
Some people go on ayahuasca journey and they're shattered or whatever. So
yeah, and I just came from the near-death experiencer conference, and it's a similar thing with near-death experiences, is that people who've had these experiences come back completely transformed, but might really, really struggle to integrate that experience in a similar way that you did.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah, and most near-death experiences are beautiful, but some of them are not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a mystery. We don't really know, but this goes back to the quality of trust and that I talked about.
So your work is fascinating. If people are interested in spiritual leadership, which I hope people who are listening are, and they want to find out more about your spiritually intelligent leadership, where can they find you other than traveling all over teaching about this?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're mentioning my books. So my book can be found anywhere. You can buy books online and elsewhere. So Spiritually Intelligent Leadership, How to Inspire by Being Inspired. I will just say that the book is not just the theory. It's like the case studies for each client and the exercises. So it's not just you read about spiritual intelligence and you got it. And you have to do the work. Like we talked about, you got to go to the gym and work out those muscle groups and each of the qualities. So that one way is through my book, of course. And then I have a website called yosiamram.net, if people can spell my name, which may not be so easy.
It will be. Here's the book if you're watching on YouTube, and it will be also in the show notes for people who are listening. So it will be easy to find.
And then I have a nonprofit called awakeningsi.org. So Awakening, SI is the short for spiritualintelligence.org. And we host free monthly events on each of the qualities. And the last Friday was on trust. The next one is on presence. So we offer resources, and I'm passionate about awakening and embodying greater spiritual intelligence in myself and the world. I have a YouTube channel that has many videos at Awakening Spiritual Intelligence, etc. But any of those, if you enter through any door, you can find the rest of it.
It's a portal to it all.
Yeah.
Well, Yosi, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your amazing experiences, your research, your work, and for transforming the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. It's so delightful to meet a resonant person and soul that has traveled a similar path. We're in this together, and none of us can do it on our own. Mm-hmm. So I think it's so gratifying to find that you're doing similar things and advocating. And so thanks for asking all these questions.
Thank you for being willing to answer them, even though they weren't probably your typical way of going into an interview. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.